Good evening, everybody. My name is Helen Androlia, and this is the Gen X think tank for our company. Today we're going to be talking about what makes a productive work culture. And so just before we kick it all off, I'd like to just run through a couple of stats, as is our tradition. So a recent report by the Workplace Research Foundation found that there was increasing employee engagement investments by 10%, can increase your profits by $2,400 per employee per year. That highly engaged employees are 38% more likely to have above average productivity. That companies that fostered engaged brand ambassadors in their workforce report an average of 2.69 days, sick days taken annually per employee, compared to companies with weak engagement efforts reporting an average of 6.9 sick days. Companies with engaged employees outperform those by 202%. Companies who implement regular employee feedback have turnover rates that are 14.9% lower than for employees that receive no feedback. So that is some pretty hefty numbers, which of course begs the question that if your workplace is not engaged, why is it not? So today we have some of our Gen X think tank gathered together today to talk about what exactly makes an engaged workplace and how that can make your workplace more productive. So why don't we kick it off with Bob, and everyone could just say hello and say, well, obviously your name is often in front of you, but who you are, what you do, and where you fall in the Gen X spectrum.
Where I fall in the Gen X spectrum, I think I'm somewhere in the ultraviolet part of the spectrum. My name is Bob Ledrew. I live and work in Ottawa, Ontario, which is the capital city of Canada, and I have my own company. I'm a consultant with Translucent Communications, and I'm also a podcaster and an amateur musician, and someone who has far more opinions than he has outlets, which is why I've ended up here.
And what about you, Brian?
I'm Brian Carter. I do a whole bunch of stuff, from Facebook ads to improv to comedy, and in fact, I'm working on some improv-based workshops that relate to this topic. I've got several books: Facebook Marketing Like Economy, LinkedIn for Business, Cowbell Principle, and about 3 in my head and 1 ready to come out.
Oh, all right. Well,
Serial book newer.
There you go. So, Bob, who makes Facebook, comedy, and books, all the books. What about you, Kristen? Tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, hi, guys. I'm Kristen Cardos. I live in Fort Worth, Texas. I am 40 years old, so wherever that puts me on the spectrum. I work in social media. Spend most of my time on Twitter. And when I say most of my time, I mean like all of my time. And I'm really, really happy to be here with you guys to talk about this. It's an important topic.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. How would you tell us about yourself, Douglas? Or Doug?
Oh, I'm next. Okay.
Yeah. You want to line on
That's
this on
me,
screen, so.
long-haired freaky. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Doug Knight. People can call me DK, so feel free to do so as well. I'm a consultant in the nonprofit sector, and I focus mostly on organizations of mid to small size. And my organization is called Connect the Dots Movement. What that means is we're trying to build better connections within our community for all the pillars of community. So .com, .org, .edu, and .gov. And specifically for today, for today's topic, very apropos, I do a lot of conversations with organizations about once they're starting up, once they get going, and they start moving into those first couple of employees. So it moves from the early adapter to the actual brick and mortar. Now we're starting up, we're going to make things happen. So I do a lot of that, and I am 40 years old, which puts me at the early, I'm 42, so I'm somewhere in the dead solid center, I think, of Gen X.
All right. And how about you, Jason?
Hi, I'm Jason Konopinski. I am, I guess I'm a cusper, depending on who you ask. I am, so I'm 35, so born right in 1980, last, beginning of millennial, end of Gen X, depending on who you ask. And what do I do for work? I am a full-time freelance writer, so work on a consultant basis with lots and lots of advertising agencies, marketing firms, writing content and copy, but do a fair bit of editorial work as well. So here we are.
Thanks. And then just to round off, Sue, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, everybody. I'm Sue Spate. I am sitting in glamorous suburban Milwaukee.
Ooh.
You're jealous. You know it. I'm sitting in my bedroom because I have a 9-year-old son and a 91-year-old father and a black lab downstairs, and it's total chaos. So, pretty classic Gen X situation. I'm 46, right smack dab sandwiched in the middle of all of it. I am a strategist for a design firm. We do a lot of big global websites, a lot of social, a lot of customer engagement programs for clients like Harley Davidson and Mercury Marine and other active outdoorsy kinds of brands, among other things. And that's about it. Nice to meet all of you. I know Bob LeDrew a little bit and Brian, and looking forward to getting to know the rest of you.
Awesome.
So that's the panel this evening. And for those of you who have not met me before on the Millennial Think Tank, I'm Helen Androlia. I'm a social interaction strategist for a small boutique agency in Toronto, in Canada. So with that being, and I guess I'm also mostly almost a customer. I fall in the late millennials, so I'm going to bring my mostly millennial, but sometimes Gen X perspective to the conversation this evening. So with that being said, I happen to notice that there's sort of a common theme between almost everybody here. We have a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of freelancers in the house this evening. So if I could get a show of hands for those of you who either own your own business or work freelance, please. Yeah, so that is the bulk of you. That's quite an impressive number. And so I guess we were having to talk about workplace productivity and company culture. Speaking to a group of people who work for themselves is definitely an interesting perspective to bring to the table.
Well, I can tell you why I left one, right? We can tell you why we didn't want to be in them.
Yeah, I was going to say, so actually, if I could start off, so Brian, since you started the conversation, I wanted to talk to the freelancers and the entrepreneurs first about why you guys decided to go solo. Brian, if you want to kick it off, you were.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I've worked in several office environments, so I haven't worked enough employee jobs to say I'm an expert at experiencing all the employee things you could experience. But, it was weird because I was doing digital marketing, and when Twitter started getting really big, and my last company was uncomfortable with the fact that I started to have my own brand. And everybody I think was pretty new to that. So that plus I just was more entrepreneurial, and the CEO gave me this really, really good deal that the company didn't want me to have anymore. So that's why. But the reason I'm an entrepreneur is because I have a lot of interests and I'm very productive, and I don't really like being limited. I don't like being managed. So, because I do pretty well, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, my grandma had this book about a bunny that followed its nose and had all these adventures, and so I think I'm that bunny, and I follow my nose, and I have adventures, and I create and produce things, and I help clients and stuff, but my experience was that most workplaces and most managers didn't really know how to use me.
Mm-hmm. What about you, DK? How did you end up working for yourself?
Yeah, I had a bit of a cliche start to my career. I was in a music fraternity in college and really enjoyed doing the work and doing the service projects. That got me into the nonprofit sector, and I quite frankly never really left. The only time I did was I worked for a consulting firm that worked with nonprofits. And I liked it a lot. It was down in Washington, D.C. My one struggle with it was very much a lot of the things that I think Brian just touched on. There's this idea of wanting to do more, wanting to be creative. There's a bit of that, hey, I'm pretty good when I go solo kind of thing. But what I really, I guess the big thing is, and again, this might be the personality thing, and this might be the generational thing. I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest. When we were coming up in the Gen X sort of thing, we came up with the first .com bubble, and we came up with really interesting things happening in the tech field for sure. But there was always this sense of like when we left school, and I don't know if everyone agrees with this, but there was like the sense there was this choice, and I think it's a false choice. Choose .com world or choose .org world. Choose to be philanthropic or choose to make some money. And I sort of rejected all of them. I said, the hell with this. I want to go to do all. And to do that sometimes means you just have to sort of carve your own way. And so I started in DC doing just that, saying there's a way for me to do both, to really help small businesses and nonprofits thrive, but also get that passionate purpose. And this is a long roundabout way of basically saying I think I like to be a solo artist, or at the very least be a jazz band guy who likes to put bands together, and then the bands go away, and then you find another band, and then you put another band back together. So I think there's a lot of that collaboration thing more than anything that I really like. And sometimes you can't find that in a structured system. Then again, part of this conversation I think today is going to be those who are building these systems can start from the beginning and create a better collaborative culture which allows for that and be a business. So I think that's what's kind of cool about what is happening now.
Cool, thank you. Well, just to put a pause on this because we've just got Ross back. So Ross, if you just want to say hi to everybody who's watching, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and where you fall in the Gen X world. That would be fantastic.
Yes, I am the Ross Quintana, and I don't have the cool little lower thirds like everyone because I had to go to my phone because no matter what I do to my computer, it refuses to be good. So I'm with Social Magnets. I do everything. I just change people's ideas a little bit here and there on different topics about marketing. And yeah, I have no bottom third, I guess. Oh, it's bottom third now. Okay, clearly I will not drink before the show. All right.
Okay, so just to loop you back in, Ross, so what we're talking right now is I was just saying that for a conversation about, workplace productivity and culture, we have a lot of freelancers and entrepreneurs in the house. So so Jason, if you could just tell us a little bit about your choice, because I know you freelance. What brought you out of sort of a more traditional office structure into this world? Where you
Sure. I think, a bit like Brian, I like to create things, and if there is a kind of a consistent thread, through my path, it's been managers, supervisors don't necessarily always know how to best use my talents, and so I found myself, I guess kind of serendipitously, find myself on in a redundant position after a corporate takeover, in a previous job, and when my book of business, went away overnight, I kind of hung a shingle and walked away from it, and kind of took a chance, and 7 years later, here I am. It's been there've been some pitfalls along the way, but I think it's been a fun journey. But I think ultimately it's about why any of us kind of start our own things is we think we can build a better mousetrap. We can think there's an opportunity we can change our industry from the way that we know best, and that's in our own sphere of influence. And so we start to do things differently. We start to build new systems, new relationships to kind of say, let's fix the industry in the way that we can control.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Kristen? What brought you to head out into the world on your own?
Well, unlike a lot of the people on the panel tonight, I'm sort of an accidental freelancer. It wasn't about disdain for the man or the establishment or bad experience. My husband is a retired Marine, so I've had 900,000 jobs as we've moved around, and basically what happened is when he retired from the Marine Corps and we kind of picked a place to live, and I had to look for my next whatever I was going to do. It just so happened that what appealed to me was an opportunity to work as a freelancer, but I didn't want it because it was freelance. It just happened that way. So, and now that I've been doing it, I've been at it for 2 years, and now I love it. But I didn't get into it, I don't think, for the same reasons that some of you did.
Well, what is a freelance life that you like so much?
It's kind of empowering. I mean, you really can pick and choose what you do, and be very vocal about, assuming that you have the luxury, just like you have the luxury of picking your job based on your ability to pay your bills and feed kids or whatever you got to do, right? But it is kind of empowering because you're the boss of you at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And for those of us who are not the bosses of ourselves, So Sue, just in contrast to everybody else who's talking about their experiences as an entrepreneur or as a freelancer, why have you ever considered going off on your own? And if not, why not?
I have definitely considered it, quite recently, in fact. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, you probably should say.
The aspects that everybody's talking about are very appealing. Being the boss of myself, I definitely have a tendency to push the boundaries of any culture that I'm in. I've been an agency all over the country for almost 25 years, and it's, at times it's a real struggle to function within the boundaries that are set, because I agree that there's a general lack of willingness to give people flexibility and treat them like grown-ups and let them push the boundaries of what's normal. And that can be really, really frustrating. For me, though, that is outweighed by the fact that I just have a lot of other interests, and with a young family, I don't want to necessarily be the one having to bring in all the business for myself. My job's really important to me. I love what I do, but it's still a job for me, and it's one big part of a lot of big parts of my life. I don't want it to take over. That may change at some point, but right now that works best for me. But I definitely feel all the same things that everybody else is saying. It's hard sometimes beating your head against the corporate culture wall.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Bob? What stops you from?
Well, it's interesting. For me, I'm probably, and I realize that I dodged the question earlier, but I may be the oldest person on this call. I'll be 49 in a few weeks. So I've been in the workforce since 87, and I started actually as a freelancer doing radio stuff for a public broadcaster here in Canada, and have sort of skipped back and forth between being an employee and being on my own. Sometimes I'm trying to think of the longest period I was actually an employee was about 8 years. And it's interesting. I'm very ambivalent. There are things about being on my own that are great. There are things about being an employee that are great. The key for me has always been to be an employee of the right, and not even the right organization, the right part of the right organization. You can very easily have a little bubble of goodness within a crap organization, and sort of exist within that, or you can, and sometimes that bubble pops, and then you're just inundated in the crap.
Yeah, that's definitely one way of putting it. So what I thought was really interesting is one of the big sort of factors that you guys keep bringing up is the notion of managers, and managers not really knowing how to best use the employees and how to sort of best get their skills extended. So I don't know if anyone else saw this, but apparently a couple of weeks ago, Zappos.com has actually decided that they're doing away with management-level employees, and that they're trying to flatten out the organization and sort of remove that extra level.
Good.
Yeah, we do have 2 Rosses. Sorry, there's a little cyber conversation.
There's 2 of them.
Oh, no. God. No.
He's twice as long. We got 2
Oh, there we go. Now we have this one. That's good.
That's all the world can handle. That's it.
Exactly.
It's like the Matrix all of a sudden.
FaceTime continuum all right now.
Mr. Smith.
So I mean, a good manager can make an enormous difference to your work life. I mean, and doing away with them entirely is really interesting, because the number of people who at Zappos have thought this was a great idea, and a number of people who were offered a buyout and took it and decided that this was not really an organization that they felt that they could adapt to. So, Kristen, you mentioned in the cyber conversation that you had a great experience with the manager. Can you talk to us a little bit about how they made your life a little more better? I mean, we don't need to talk about the tangible experiences, but definitely how a manager can make all the difference to your workload.
Absolutely. Interestingly enough, this example, I was working as a civilian with a unit of Marines, and this particular manager, a lot of people have a lot of preconceived notions about how the military works, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But this particular manager was the commander of the unit, and he was a very, very in tune with the people, and very interested in the culture, and very interested in empowering his subordinates. One of his favorite catchphrases was trust tactics. You know, I'm going to ask you to build the bridge. I'm not going to stand there and watch you build it. I'm not going to tell you how to build it. You're probably not going to build it the way that I would. So he was just really, really into empowerment and trust. Some guardrails would be in place, just like you would expect anywhere, but he was just very, very positive and walked his talk when he said that he was interested in the individual succeeding and for the greater good of the organization.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Brian, you just mentioned your experience of becoming a manager was weird. Do you want to care to elaborate on that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the last job I had, I was hired as a department head for, I was the only person in the department initially to do search, SEO and search marketing for an agency that did a lot of hotel and golf type of hospitality type of work. And as I established what we should do for the clients and got all that set up, they had me start hiring people, and I had to train people and all this stuff. And I got to a point where, there are those leaders who say like you're not a great leader unless you're creating other leaders, and that John Maxwell, for example. So I was like, okay, I've got to delegate, I've got to let go, I'm going to create systems, and I'm going to train these guys, and I ultimately made it a lot easier for them to let me go, which was fine because they gave me a great severance, and that launched my whole last 5 years, which has been awesome. But I think I experienced firsthand what a lot of managers experience, which is that when you're not doing the work anymore that you originally were brought in to do, and that was what you were really good at. Peter principle, you get promoted, and then you're like, okay, I'm supposed to manage. No, wait. And if you're ever sitting in your office going like, I don't know what to do, what am I doing? Then you have to create work for yourself, and you have to then you start foisting yourself on your employees, and you don't want to bug them. You're like, should we do more training? And then all those, they create all these things like evaluating employees and blah, blah, blah. Let's do a trust fall. Let's have some team building, blah, blah, blah. How much of that comes out of middle managers just being insecure because they don't know what the heck they're supposed to be doing? So that was my experience, and I kept holding on to some work, and I would pioneer a new area, okay, let's get into social marketing. This was 2008, so there were definitely things that I could do, but I felt a little bit of that, and I think that's why I'm so glad that Zappos is trying that out, because I think apart from HR people telling you or maybe helping you know what your goals are and how are you growing and what are your metrics and how do you know you're doing a good job and what should you be doing, there's a lot of crap that comes from just having managers.
Cool.
So you actually experienced an HR manager?
An HR what?
An HR manager helped you?
No. I'm thinking theoretically.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah.
Theoretical HR manager help.
Hold on. Some HR managers totally help people.
Yeah, I'm sure there are great ones and horrible ones like everything else.
Well, I think this brings up a really interesting point, though, is that we have all these sort of structures set up in the traditional workplace that are really intended to make employees' lives easier, right? To train and educate, to provide recognition, to assist them when they need help. But often when we talk about how those actually work in our day-to-day lives, we often talk about them in these really sort of, derogatory terms, they don't really add that much value to our experiences as employees. And it's interesting because, because we have so many freelancers here. You guys don't really have an HR department. The only person who's talking inappropriately to you is you.
Well, but you have to manage. But have to manage yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, Helen, I know that it is rare that I am working on a project by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am either connecting other consultants, other freelancers with one another for the benefit of a mutual client, to kind of manage a project. And so while we may be, kind of masters of our own destiny. You know, when it comes to the work that we are doing, you know, we're not operating in a bubble. You know, I mean, I'm still accountable to the clients that I have. I'm accountable to the client partners that I have. And you know, speaking for myself, it is rare that I do business directly with an end client. I often work within agencies, and so you know, it's working from, you know, one deployed group to another, working all, you know, we're all working for the mutual benefit of a client. And so there's a culture that emerges from that, and we're all kind of responsible for managing our own workflows and interacting with one another. So while I may not be in a, you know, a traditionally managed environment within a company, a single organization, we're still accountable to one another.
No, and I think that's a really good point. I mean, DK, do you have a perspective on this at all, on what it's like to sort of run your own business and start providing these own systems for yourself?
Yeah, you know, it's really been interesting hearing all this, because what it comes down to, at least for me and my thinking about stuff like this, is, you know, for a long time there was this idea of sort of management. That was the thing. You become a manager. You manage. You are a manager of people, of things, of process. And now the shift is been moving to culture. And sort of some of the things that I talk about is I dare to say, you know what, I think we're at a point where these two are exactly the same. And how you decide on where you want to work is not based on a management structure, it's based on a culture. And that culture has management in it in some capacity, but it could be you, it could be somebody else. Tony Shea at Zappos, this is really interesting. It's called Holacracy, H-O-L-A-C. You know, so his idea for this, first of all, we all know them as a business for years has been touted as one of the best places to work, and it's fantastic, and they do all great stuff. And I think if I could get in his brain a little bit, I think what he was doing is saying, okay, this is the most natural evolution of management in this amazing culture that we have all collectively built. What if we just flattened everything? And there was no up and down. It was simply everybody here in the pool, everybody here in the boat rowing the same way, and imagine what we can do. And I don't think he necessarily thought far beyond that, because I think he looked at it through the lens of his culture and said, I like what we've got here. Let's find a management system that allows for that. Now, there's gaps in this. There's obviously going to be something where you're going to need a manager. You're going to need somebody to call balls and strikes, or you need that to happen in some capacity. I think for the discussion we're talking about here, I think no matter if you are a solo artist, if you're in a band, if you're in a group of bands, if you are in a huge conglomerate of 35 years and a gold watch, almost that is immaterial to the bigger question, which is, what kind of leadership do you have in there? And more importantly, what kind of leadership do you as an individual, no matter what your position, where are you allowed to express your creativity and your collaborative efforts? And because I think that's where culture is the best in terms of review. Because I think we've all experienced those moments where you're sitting around going, man, this vibe is not me. It's just not me. And I don't know how else to say it. It's just not me. And some of us decided that, all right, it's time to exit stage left, and we'll just kind of figure out what we're going to do. Whereas others, I think, say, no, you know what, I'm going to double down in here, and I'm going to see if I can help fix this culture on the inside. I think either way is badass awesome. I think the bigger thing is there an opportunity to do it? And I think where people like Jason and I, we're both in the York, Pennsylvania area, and we've done some things together. I think what's been really fun is when you have that ability to sort of pick your band, where you could set up and you could say, man, I love all these saxophone players, they're badass fun. You bring them into the fold because you like that sound. And if we can do that with our businesses, you're now establishing a great culture that you say, I bring in the people who match me, who match the culture of the me, the collective me, not the individual, what we represent. I mean, I think that's brilliant. You hire for attitude and you train for skill, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I do think it's an interesting way of sort of building your business. I mean, in a way, it's sort of like the family that you choose, right? It's the office that you choose. Sue, I was just wondering, so how do you think you would function in a world without managers?
The primary function my manager serves right now, and she's great, she's one of the best I've ever had the blessing to work with, is to advocate for me to get the kind of flexibility that I need to make sure I have what I need to do my job. But I think the interesting point that DK brings up is the better the leadership is, the less that's needed, right? Because everyone feels empowered to do what needs to be done. And if the culture is sensible and there's a minimum of dysfunction, the less middle management layer is actually needed to fight through stupidity and make it possible to get things done within the corporate mass that's so often created, where it's too difficult to get things done.
I had to do that.
That idea is brilliant. I hope it works.
Fair enough. Sorry,
yeah, there's something too about that as far as the flat organization that I think is interesting, in that if you look at the mechanics of what it does, it actually in my view puts all hands on deck, and I think that sometimes the structure works against you, the traditional structure, because it's saying, well, I can shut my brain off because I've got my stuff, and the manager, he's got his things that he's got to do, and that's not my job. And I think that when you flatten it, one of the things, even though I don't know that that's the end result, like it's not an all or nothing absolute structure that I think is going to work, maybe it's a modification of it, but what I do find interesting about that is that when you flatten that out, then you realize that, oh, well, he's getting paid more money, so he has to be accountable. But I'm getting paid less money, so I guess I just got to do my job. And really, you wipe that off of the table and say, look, we're all here. We all drove in a car or a bike or something. You don't drive a bike, but we all showed up to work, and we're all building this business. And when you're flat like that, you're saying, look, everybody's here for a common goal, and it takes all that structural stuff that actually disengages you from the overall task and from caring about what the vision of the company is, and all the things that are a lie in most companies, where it's like, we've got our mission statement, and oh, the customer's always right, and it's like, no, it isn't, and no, you don't, and none of that's just stuff that's written in a book somewhere. The fact of the matter is, you can look at the structure, and the structure will set up how everything works. And so I think that that's an interesting play, and I think we'll see more of it as people come in and say, you know what, I'm here to help out, and why wouldn't you want an employee to buy into the whole vision like a CEO should? And even CEOs really are moving around too much. But why wouldn't you want everybody in there saying, you know what, I showed up and I'm here, what's my part? What's your part? They may be different parts, but we're all here to grow this company and to take it to the next level. And I think just getting everybody in that closer to the goal mindset can change everything in an organization if it's done correctly.
Well, okay. So with that being said, Bob, what do you feel is the kind of culture that fosters that buy-in from employees? What gets you sort of on that same level? That's a big question.
I think one thing, I was worried that everything seemed to freeze for a second. One thing that can do that is having a sense that you have a manager or your direct report that will fight on your behalf or advocate on your behalf, as Sue said. I've certainly been in an employee in organizations where I have felt supported and to a greater or lesser extent protected to be able to do what I'm going to do, and that creates a whole sense of loyalty, and it can create a really virtuous circle where people will support the manager, and then the manager comes back and says, you guys did great, and everything works together. So that's one thing that I think is crucial, is making sure that the employees feel that their manager is theirs, not the big bosses up there somewhere.
That's great.
Yeah. I try to say that bosses are shields. I think the best boss you can have is the one who's the shield. He's the one. He or she comes out and says, "Look, that's on me. That's my team. It's on me." And when things go great, they're the open window. No, that's not me. That goes through that way. It's keep going. It's the people behind me over here. I mean, I think those are the best.
The danger in that is that you can seeing those people get burned out from doing that if they have to do it too much.
Yeah, it's true. When your hero dies on the battlefield, sometimes that has an effect, right? Because you're like, hey, he's my guy. Oh yeah, he's awesome. And then, oh, okay, well now now morale and everything changes because you're going, oh no, I lost that. So I think that's why the flat system actually helps disperse that, because you need protection due to the structures of a lot of businesses. That's why when your voice isn't being heard, when you're being treated wrong, when there's injustice and the machine is crushing you and it doesn't even know it's crushing you, and nobody cares, that's when you're counting on those managers. And I think that it's a symptom of the problem of some of that structure and that hierarchy structure, that I think that people are going to be more fluid and realize that I don't need a defender as much when actually I have some autonomy, and when people trust me to do a job and I can think outside of my task and I can do all that stuff.
Trust is huge. I think the trust thing is absolutely huge. I don't remember if it was Tony at Zappos or somebody else who said the thing about how if you can't trust your employees, they shouldn't be there. Isn't that what a lot of it really comes down to? Is just trust your people, let them do what they're there to do, minimize the BS, and let them go.
So do you think, I want to, a question that always comes up with this, and I love the idea of a flat organization, similar to what's happening at Zappos, but do you think that there perhaps are practical limits to that? I mean, can we really, within, are there industries that are perhaps limited by, certain hierarchical structures that, like, they're fundamental to the way that they operate? I mean, I'm trying to imagine that, something like healthcare, how healthcare might look in a completely flat organization. How
there won't be one in a hospital. There won't be one.
You know what I mean? Like, or something like the military. I think there are certain organizations to where
well, how many companies have done
structure
this?
Needs to exist.
How many companies have done this?
I mean, to the best of my understanding, I would say it's either like really small teams. Like, I mean, just thinking back to my own knowledge, like I know I was talking with Hesse before the hanging started about Instagram. And Instagram only had 6 employees. It was a relatively flat team, but they still had a president, they still had a CEO. It's just that there was only 6 of them. So it was definitely easy to sort of build that sense of equality and teamwork. I know that my organization, for instance, we do have a leadership system, and I myself fall in the management team. But at the same time, I would say from a cultural perspective, we have a very sort of flat feel, a very flat vibe. There's definitely a clear leadership, but there's a lot of equality in the way that everything is sort of meted out. But as far as an organization as large as Zappos, not one that I could think of without having to Google it.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think they're one of the more unique ones in size. But I think this goes back to what we're talking about, though. I think the reason that it can work isn't necessarily just because of size. I think it's because of the culture and the sense of ownership and empowerment that was said before. I think if that is sort of pervasive throughout whatever your organization is, then you might have hierarchy. You might have a C-level positions and mid-level and all that, but you don't feel that way. You feel it's flat, because you have that cultural ability to connect department to department, or you can go up the chain. The door is literally open, and you can walk into the CFO's office and get a question answered, or things like that. I think a lot of this goes back to what culture are you establishing. It was mentioned before about sort of the leadership and a question about would it work in the military, and I think that's an appropriate one because it's a good example of like, well, leadership is needed because of the way that the system is set up. However, I would throw an interesting thing, since the flag thing is so big these days right now. Imagine if you look at history and stuff, how many people would pick up those banners every time there was a battle going on? Would just pick it up, the honor of holding that banner. It was like that leader, that person who went down holding that banner, somebody else immediately picked that thing up. And I think they did wasn't because management was strong enough to say someone needs to pick this thing up. I think it was the culture of the regiment, the culture of the army, the culture of the country saying, no one will let this flag hit the ground. Someone is going to do it. And it's sort of understood because the culture was there and the honor was there and everything. I think organizations, without having to go too deep in something like this, I think what they need to start doing, and I hope we do this all collectively, is when we get together, you know the skill sets that you bring to the table, or at least you hope you know the skill sets bringing to the table. And if we're going to work on something, and Brian says, "Hey, I got this," I'm genuinely wanting that to be absolutely, yep, he's got it, no problem, and I'm not thinking about it. I know it's going to be in the system and in the tasks and in the work that we're doing, but if the culture is set up where I'm forever looking over my shoulder making sure Brian's doing something, or Brian's forever looking above the cubicle kingdom saying, where's Doug, is he walking around? If that's the culture that's set up, it almost doesn't matter what skill sets everybody brings to the table, because your business now is to stay above water or to stay alive. And that's, I think, the biggest thing where culture is the massive importance, at least to me, when it comes to working in businesses. And I think we all feel that, whether you're a consultant or not, when you walk into a business and you just get that feel like, man, it is tense as all giddy up in here. What's going on here? And you haven't done one thing yet. You just walk in, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, and you have a beer in your hand. You're like, hey, this is ridiculous.
So I think this also sort of brings up an important point too, because I mean, I think culture, while it's obviously so tied to work dynamics and how people get along and how the organization is structured, you know, there's a lot of discussion right now, and I mean, not to tie it into generation versus generation, but you know, what millennials are looking for from work, and a lot of them are saying, you know, it's not so much about work-life balance, it's about work enabling them to pursue other aspects of their life, like you know, having health programs, or having, you know, large vacation policies, or you know, sort of corporate responsibility programs, and so on. And so there's been a lot of conversation about how we make the workplace culture sort of embrace this to make things more friendly for millennials. So from a Gen X perspective, how important do you think those things are to your satisfaction at work? And, you know, are those the kind of programs that you're looking for if you, for instance, were making a switch back to a full-time job? Kristen, do you have any thoughts on that?
I will go second.
Okay, you'll go second. Does anyone want to go first on that?
You know, I can take that one, because it's a really big focus at the company where I work, and I think it is important to millennials, but hopefully all of us. The wellness program thing is huge. We actually have a program at our company where you get paid extra to take a 2-week vacation, because they really want to see people go pursue other interests and have some real, honest-to-God time and space to decompress and pursue their other interests. I think things like that are becoming more and more common, and I want them just as much as any 25-year-old that I know. I think it's important.
And then, you know,
interesting.
from the practical side, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, just from I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just this jumped into my head.
You have a better background, so you go first.
so it just from a cost perspective, I mean, it's the old model of let's pay for or incentivize employees to join gyms, because we know that it ultimately will mean less insurance payoffs. You know, I mean, like less claims, less health insurance claims if they're taking care of themselves proactively, and we're encouraging that behavior. It costs in the long run. So from that same perspective, I mean, it encourages higher levels of productivity. If it's not, no employee feels that they are chained to their desk and coming back, that they have that freedom to step away, to take the vacation, to recharge, because it ultimately benefits the company when they come back.
Right, they're going to be
not feeling like I have to take a vacation because, oh my God, I hate my job.
Right.
I can't wait for that vacation.
Your life, right? You don't want to feel like you have to wait to escape from your life. That's why more and more companies, I think, are starting to give people unlimited paid time off. I mean, it sounds like a radical, scary concept if you're an HR manager in a big corporation, I'm sure. How can we just give everybody unlimited paid time off? But from the employee perspective, it means you trust me, and I'm going to kick ass when I'm here, and when I'm gone, I'm going to be gone.
To me, the sexiest perk I ever had was really, really good professional development opportunities or tuition assistance, those things where the organization was putting money into me as an individual. I love that better than anything ever, including vacations or some of the other benefits that I've had over the years.
Yeah,
See,
getting sent to go to conferences and that kind of thing was big for me too.
I was going to say, I think it's really interesting because I think that a lot of the time organizations make the mistake of thinking that everybody receives recognition and reward in the same way. And that, you know, like, for instance, I think we all have stories of, like, when we are going to go turn in our notice somewhere, and they're just like, well, we'll give you a raise, we'll give you a bonus, we'll do this. And it's like, sometimes it's not about money, and people just don't always seem to understand that like everybody's recognition is different.
That you guys know the 5 love languages thing?
Mm-hmm.
There's probably like a 5 employee rewards languages thing, too.
Actually, if I may,
let's write a book.
No, there's there might be more, but they generally fall into like 3 different categories. And I mean, if you guys think this sounds completely off base to you, by all means, like shake your head or jump in. But basically, there are people who are incentive based, so they like things, they like money, they like stuff, they like time off. There are people who like recognition, so they like to have their name on a plaque, or they like to get an award, or they like to, on the Monday morning meeting, when everybody's in the same room, they like to get a round of applause. And then there are the people who like experiences or insider knowledge. So these are the people who like additional training. They like to be taken to a client meeting they wouldn't be invited to otherwise. They like to be sent to a conference. And those are sort of the 3 main categories that most people fall into. So there are the people who don't care if you ever pay attention to them, as long as you give them a nice fat raise. There are the people who don't care if you ever give them any money, as long as you send them halfway around the world to learn something new. And then there are the people who like to have their picture up on the wall as the employee of the month and have everyone know how awesome they are. Does that sound about right to you guys?
Yeah,
I think
makes
all
sense.
3.
Yeah, and then there are some people who are, this is the 4th category, all 3.
Here's one of the funny things about that is there's really 2 conversations going on there. And I think that what's interesting is that it boils down to the conversation the company is having towards the employee. When we think about the difference between like work-life balance or you know, benefits or things that matter to the, you know, and incentives and stuff, those are just 2 sides of the same conversation, because one is saying, it's coming from the company where they're saying, hey, you know, we want to retain people and we want people to be more happy and productive, so they're trying to give you what they think you want. And then on the other side, there's a change in our culture right now, whether it be, you know, generational thinking and mindset, or whether it's just, you know, a reaction, partial reflection of society's change. But what's happening is people then are saying, you know what do I want? It used to be, it didn't matter what you wanted. You just went to work, and if you wanted your paycheck, you'd do whatever you were supposed to do, and there was no work-life balance. And then the next phase was like, oh, now it's competitive for people, and we gotta want to make you be a little bit happier, and oh, hey, accidentally, it's also more productive for our business, profitable. And then there's the other side, which on the freelancer side, which is, I don't want to have to ask to go pee, and I don't really need you to give me a gym membership. What's cool about freelancing is when I want to go work out, I just go do it, and I schedule my schedule around my workout. And it's like there's all these different kind of, like, the adoption curve of things where it goes, and that is going to continue to shift forward. So by the time, you know, the companies who aren't figuring that out, who are still just, hey, you're a worker, they're losing people to the people who are talking about work-life balance, and those people are losing people to freelance work that are saying, hey, you know, it's cool, I can get all my work done in an hour and take, you know, the afternoon off and go snowboarding, like whatever, you know. I mean, it's where it's going. And so if you can think ahead to that, you can position yourself and say, it doesn't have to be one conversation or the other. What do we think? But more importantly, just like social media teaches us, it doesn't matter what you think. Listen to your workers. You're part of their life. If you all of a sudden realize they have a life and that you're only a part of it, and then you can say, how can I make your work life better? And how can, we'll spill over and make your actual life better by helping you. You know, we're going to send you to school and over here, but we hope that we're going to retain you and that you're going to love us for that. You know, and so I think that's a big.
Yeah, well, but I think it's also interesting because Brian also brought up the point too about, you know, that he works for himself, and that he works, he actually has a harder time taking a vacation than he ever did before. And yeah, I see a lot of nodding.
Is he thinking of leaving himself?
Yeah, I really am. Oh, maybe that's an idea. Actually, we could start up a.
He's been talking to a couple other people.
Yeah.
Send out freelance HR people to go and visit you in your home and make sure that you're taking enough vacation and are taking benefits packets for you.
Actually, what he needs to do is fire himself as the HR because he's not getting it done for himself, and then they'll hire somebody.
Stare in the mirror, do your exit interview to yourself.
The
Well,
curse is when you get the job doing the thing you love to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's no how do you stop yourself? And plus, I have a bad habit of turning all my hobbies into businesses. So, but I love doing it. Yeah,
I get it.
I mean, I think the beach.
That's where you grow it.
The beach is a great idea. It's a great idea. But when you get there, there's just like sand and water.
And the Wi-Fi's terrible.
And the Wi-Fi's terrible. Exactly.
So I was being facetious, but.
Well, and I think perhaps that this idea of work-life balance is just one giant fiction. You know, I mean, and I've stopped referring to it as balance. It's blend for me. I mean, it moves in and out. That it's, you know, it's not like, you know, work is over here and life is over here. I mean, everything's life, right? I mean, and it's how do we blend those responsibilities so that, you know, for me it's been when I am on a project, you know, I tend to do that at my co-working space. You know, I try to keep at least some level of separation. Thank you. I do like my bow tie. It's just to be away from, you know, so I'm not sitting on my couch till 11:30 at night, like staring at my computer and going, Jason, what did you just do for the past 3 hours?
Facebook.
You know, if I'm on Facebook or I'm, you know, just engaged in some conversation somewhere, but for me to be able to, like, work is still, like, lives at the office. It lives in that space. I mean, it's certainly, like, it blends into, like, when I'm at home, but I try to keep that separation to some level. Doesn't always work, but I try.
Well, I wanted to say something earlier, and this dovetails with that, is that one of the best things, my company I was with was not horrible. There were a lot of great things. One of them was that my manager let me take my 3 people out to lunch once a week on the company dime for lunch, right? So, and then I would have lunch with him like maybe every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks. And, you know, the thing I hate the most about a corporate environment, the one I envision, is not getting to be yourself and having to be a politician or a diplomat all the time, and we had enough of a culture of like comedy that we were able to get pretty honest with each other. And I think it's harder when you're sitting there eating with somebody for 45 minutes. It's difficult to keep up that BS politician thing. So I think that really helped a lot.
Okay, well,
yeah, once you have crumbs in your beard, it's kind of like, okay, I hate you actually.
And you can laugh about it.
Exactly. I'm still going to finish my sandwich. But anyway, I'm sorry about that. No, we're awesome. High five.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ross, please.
I think that company culture and exactly keeping up that whole facade, I think earlier we were talking about, oh, you know, can we integrate that? Will it work for all models? And I think it doesn't have to. I think that you can make the edges flat. I think that you can find out where it's smart, because it's just not like a square that you can just shove into any shape hole. You know, it's like, I think there's certain businesses where it absolutely makes sense and it's kind of almost a natural fit. But then I think that you can take those elements and say, why clearly there's problems with this structure that's the standard. And it doesn't mean you have to be extreme to the other side, but it also doesn't mean that you can't observe those, and the military can't observe that and say, where can we implement that type of concept in areas where maybe we've created this certain structure and it just doesn't work well everywhere we put it in our own organization. You know, maybe, yeah, we can, oh, it's just like telecommuting, and, you know, oh, Bob doesn't need to be there. It always, like, makes me laugh when I'm looking for new clients or something like that, and then they're like, okay, well, it said telecommute or something in the ad, and then they say, well, we need you in here once a month, and it's like in Kansas or something. I'm like, I'm not driving there, and honestly, you haven't figured out yet that I don't need to be there and that there's really no value to me sitting down at the desk to have a meeting. Like everything I do is on the computer.
I like what you just said about flattening edges. I mean, not everything's black and white, and some situations might actually lend themselves to making adjustments in some areas and, being partially flat.
Yeah, a little bit flat.
Well, at least when it comes to like a virtual organization, like you got to be all in on it. I remember one of the first jobs that I had, like out of grad school, I was a remote employee, and it was like one of like 3 in the entire team, and there was always that people in the room forgot about you're sitting on the conference bridge and that you're there. Like, I'm still connected to it, so I think for if a virtual team works, it's got to be all in. I don't think it works in 95% of the people are in the office, and you've got this kind of like rogue group that sits dispersed teams across the country. It's you're virtual or you're not.
Did you see that? Did you see that little thing that held the iPad that rolled around the office for virtual workers? Just had their face. Oh, that was good stuff right there. Because then you can hug Bob. He's there. He's right there.
I would like that.
I want one, actually.
I feel like I need one. And you could customize it. You could program it to be 5 minutes late to every meeting, so it's kind of realistic. And you're like, hey, there comes Bob.
Okay, stop using my name. I'm getting...
Okay.
All right. So we only have 5 minutes left in the chat. And so with that being said, I think a good way to wrap it up would be if we talked about... I would love everyone to go through and say one feature that their dream job would have and one thing that they think every job could do without. Like, I know for me, when I started at my job, they asked me what my absolute dream job looked like, and I said, I've always felt the 9-to-5 schedule was totally arbitrary. I've never understood why that's the business hours. And if it was up to me, I would roll in at 1 and roll it at 9 p.m. because I'm largely nocturnal anyway. And so getting up at 6 for me is a nightmare. So Bob, since we're all talking about your name, what would be the one thing that would make your job the best ever, and the one thing you could really do without?
I think the thing that would make a job really attractive to me would be the ability to say, as long as I'm hitting all of my marks, if I disappear on a morning and with notice and say, you know what, I'm doing a 3-hour bike ride this morning, so I'll be in at noon. That if I get 0 static for that, as long as I'm hitting my marks, that's a hugely attractive thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
The killer for me would probably be a dress code. Honestly, a dress code.
You should show everyone your shorts, Bob.
Requiring bow ties.
Right on, Bob. Right on.
Yeah. But don't treat me like a child. Don't tell me how to dress.
All right, Brian. What would be your ultimate best and worst?
Number 1, mandatory improv, because you know what? Number 1, it forces you out of your BS normal everyday character into others, and number 2, it bonds you with people in a way you've never felt before. Number 3. I forgot number 3. I may come back to it. The worst. What's the worst thing? The worst thing. I forgot that one too. Can I start?
Of
later?
course, we can come back to you.
No coverage for Ritalin for Brian.
No, I can't find it. I can't find it in here.
What about you, Kristen? What would be your best and your worst?
All right, best is when I'm super excited and totally drinking the Kool-Aid of the people and whatever the goal and the mission is. Just that whole connected feeling and it being as important to me or more so than everybody else. And then the worst is when you try to make me smaller or less capable than I am, and I've had this job before, where you tell me, I can only do these 2 things. even though I have the time, the ability, and the absolute competence to do 12 times that much, try to keep me in a little basket. I don't like that. That's terrible.
All right. Sorry? Oh, and since we're going to the line from my end, sorry. DK?
Okay, so the thing I would love the most of a job, and the thing that I just look forward to all the time is, I'm not a smoker, so the idea of a smoke break, I think every organization should have an idea break. You should be able to get up and go to a specific room that's just wall-to-wall whiteboards and just throw ideas out there, and you put little good ideas, bad ideas. It doesn't matter. An idea doesn't matter at that point. Just a place that is. You don't bring your work in there. You don't bring a laptop. You bring nothing but your ideas and a Sharpie, and you get in there and you just do it. I think any group that has something like that is a badass group that I'd like to hang with. Conversely, the thing I wouldn't want is, and I stay away from as much as possible, is any organization where the following phrase is said 10 minutes into your conversation. Well, this is how we've always done it. That's where I say, exit, stage left, thanks so much for talking, I'm not interested in that.
Out.
Yeah, that's later.
They also say that in the South, okay? Where I live, so I'm allowed to say that.
How we do it.
Not good.
Oh, can everybody sorry, I'm a little frozen. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so my keyboard just doesn't seem to want to cooperate with me. What about you, Jason?
Oh man, I think for me, it's I love this idea of like an idea break. Man, DK, that's a good one.
Boom, shakalaka.
Right? Like that's I don't know that I could top that. I think
Write
just
the book.
in any organization like that, you get everybody in the same room and just like spitball ideas for 10 or 15 minutes, like completely disconnected, or even just idea of like being able to play. In a tangible way, like not just taking having the freedom to take the 10 or 15 minutes to like watch stupid cat videos, or like taking 10 minutes to to play a quick quick ping pong game in the office. Like that's so valuable to productivity and just there's valuable work, and then there's work that like we take ourselves too seriously for, and just like being able to enjoy ourselves when we're in work. And I think like what the absolute the killer for me would be structured meetings upon meetings upon meetings, like meetings to plan the next meetings. Like, and I've been on teams and companies and projects that have done that, and I said, you know what, like, screw it, I just need to let me do the work. Like, stop talking about it, let's just do it.
Death by meeting.
All right, what about you, Ross?
Let's see, a thing that I would love. Well, at first, I was gonna go with Bob, and I kind of felt a similar way, and then I kind of had to reevaluate because there's so many things that you would really like. But for me, when I think about happiness in the workplace and I think about what really makes you excited to be there and go, it's the people. So actually, it seems like an odd thing, right? Because we think about, oh, well, here's what I want. But you know what I want? I want to be on a project with people who care and who kick ass and who are awesome. I don't know if I can say that. Anyway, because when you get the right people, it isn't work. You're just going, and you are awesome, and you appreciate each other, and everybody's contributing and adding value. I think the biggest thing that makes me hate a place to work is when you've got someone who's lazy, or somebody who is just disruptive and doesn't add value, and someone who's, you've got all of this where it's like, oh, it's really hard for me to be passionate today about what I'm doing because these three people aren't passionate, and that's kind of killing my mojo. And it's like, and that's whether it's your management or whether it's people on your team that you're having to pick up the slack for. So for me, I think them putting more time into making teams that work and meshing the right people with each other to really feed off and create that extra energy, I think that would be the great thing. The thing that I don't like, well, these can kind of be reframed as either like or don't like. I agree that the flexibility, I like results-based. Like don't tell me I have to spend 8 hours on this task because I've figured out 10 ways to do it smarter in 10 minutes. and now I'm gonna now I'm penalized for being smarter instead of rewarded and said, hey, you did the great job in 10 minutes. Go take the next 3 hours it takes everyone else to do this same thing, and go skate in the parking lot or go have a beer or do something. Like, that would be great to just say, hey, as long as you're kicking butt and you're getting your work done, we're not going to. We think that the average people are going to take it like 3 hours to do this. So if you can do it smarter and faster, not only do it smarter and faster, gain that time, you're still going to get paid for those 3 hours, but on top of that, please tell us how you did it. We'd love to reward you and see if anyone else wants to do these things smart like this too. Like, that would be the work environment that I'd be like, cool, because then you just vibe off each other even more.
Great. And finally, Sue, what would be your ideal and your worst?
I don't think I can say it any better than that. And I definitely can't say vibe off of each other with greater credibility than that. You know, the flexibility thing is huge. I want unlimited flexibility. I want unlimited paid time off. I'm a grown-up. Treat me like one. You can trust me. All of that. Things not to do. Don't kill me with all the back-to-back meetings. You know, I've been in a job in the past where it's not unusual to sit in meetings for 6 or 7 hours a day, and you're not getting any work done. And we're all here to ultimately to do the work. You know, to have the ideas and do the great stuff and get it done. Last thing that I don't think anybody's mentioned yet is don't take my door. Don't stick me in a mosh pit all day with this open office concept that's so big now. It doesn't work.
It's for extroverts.
By all means, have great collaborative workspaces where we can get together and mosh it out. But then give me a place to go where I have a door and can actually get some work done. Because of all the open space concept thing, you can flush your productivity down the toilet because it's not going to happen.
And on that note, with flushing it down the toilet, we have to bring a conclusion to this month's Gen X Thinking because we are currently running over time. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for joining us and having a really great conversation. And thank you for everybody tuning in. My name is Helen Androlia, and we'll see you next month. Say goodbye, everybody.
See y'all.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.